Ram Thorburn here, back with another music video reaction. This one was a special request from one of my followers, and if you're watching this, you know who you are. Thank you very much for suggesting this video because this is an awesome song. This is We the People by Burden. I've never heard of Burden before, not familiar, but I'm looking forward to reviewing this song, We the People.
Never tell them who I am. Well, I came, I'm a man. 6 shooters in both my hands. I'm a cold-blooded brother, a real bad mother. Watch out, honey, here I am.
Alright, so let's just go ahead and jump right into this.
They want me 6 feet deep, they want me under the dirt, don't wanna let me breathe. They want my mama to hurt, they might know my face, they might know my name, but they don't know my past, they never felt my pain. But they talk about to die, somebody pray for me. The homies in the sky gon' have to wait.
I like this beat.
Watch what you say to me, cause I done seen a lot of shit that I can never talk about. I don't wanna hurt your feelings, why you gonna be so fragile? We politicking and you get offended and I look like an asshole.
Alright, so he's already talking right off the bat. Why you gotta be so fragile? We politicking and you're getting mad, make me look an asshole or something like that. And that really is kind of interesting because you see the way that the left operates whenever you have a whenever you have a political discussion with somebody on the left. The right typically has a sense of limiting principles. So limiting principles on what is right and what is wrong. The left seems to view that the limiting principles are always an injunction on whatever lifestyle somebody wants to live. Where most likely typically on the right, we have an idea that live your life however you want. You know, you can swing your arms in any direction so long as you don't hit anybody. But we also don't necessarily want to see the glorification of certain cultural movements permeating through our culture. We don't necessarily, a lot of us, we might have kids. We don't want them to be readily susceptible to all of these ideas and things like that. So live your life how you want. But there's a difference between the public world and the private world. And the left doesn't seem to get that. To them, they always say that the political is the personal and the personal is the political. And so for them, they think that everything that they live in their life, everything about their lifestyle has to be up front and center, that it has to be completely represented in pop culture. They don't understand that there is a difference between what is publicly acceptable versus what you do in your private time. And so the right puts these limiting principles on what we want our culture to put out because we want to have good influences on people. But the left never accepts that. And so because they are able to take our idea of limiting principles and put that as an affront on somebody's personal life, they are able to turn around and make us look like the bad guys. But if you really look back, ever since all of these different cultural revolutions, since the 1960s, the sexual revolution, all of these different ideas where we've gone further and further left, have we become any happier as a people? No, we tend to typically we've become more disconnected, more disassociated. We don't have the same ties that bind us together that we used to. And that is why they are always able to make us look like jerks, because we put these limiting principles on what should be out in the culture and what should be accepted in public life. And they don't make that distinction between the public and the private, because the personal is the political.
And I look like an asshole. Don't be surprised if you see gunmen post outside of that business. They sick and tired of holding fire and they just trying to end it. So
yeah. Don't be surprised if you see gunmen up on their businesses. If you're out there looting and rioting and causing problems, do not be surprised when people pick up their guns and start defending their business. And a lot of this comes down to the fact that many of these on the left, they have this me type of. It's a very self-centric worldview where whatever they do is so important and they don't have any kind of care in the world to try to look at it from anybody else's perspective. So they sit there and say, well, we're justified in our diversity of tactics. That's what they call it, the diversity of tactics. We're totally justified in going out and looting and rioting and doing all this, and it's fine because you've got insurance. But that's total bullshit. Because so many people, I mean, insurance doesn't rebuild what you built by hand over generations or over decades or over years, however long it took you to build a business. You could have rare artifacts in there that, sure, insurance might be able to give you the money for, but it can't replace it. Then you don't have to be rare artifacts. It could be things with sentimental value. But they don't care because it's all about them. It's all about, we are the voice of the unheard, or you know, whatever what is that they say, writing is the voice of the unheard or something like that. Yeah, well, the truly unheard people in our culture right now are the ones who just lost everything at the hands of those who, we've heard you loud and clear. Now get the fuck out of here. So yeah, don't be surprised when people start exercising their Second Amendment rights and coming out to defend their businesses, because that is their business, and you have no right. You have no right, because we have personal property here in America. Despite the fact that you have people like Derek Bell, who was the founder of critical race theory, talking about how even the concept of private property is tainted by slavery, and how, you know, we have to do away with private property because of that. No, not one bit. We have our private property and we have the right to defend it. That is America.
Fire and they just trying to end it. So pick a side, you crucified by everybody's opinion. So keep it peaceful, cause the people around here armed and malicious, protected by the amendments. I want you all in attendance. So I say that I ain't never backing down with God as my witness.
Yeah, protected by the amendments. And, you know, it was funny the other day when I was watching the debate with Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Chris Wallace again asked that question, will you condemn white supremacists? Despite the fact that Trump has condemned white supremacists since day one. And it's funny because in the 2016 debates, Chris Wallace hosted one of those as well. He asked the same damn question. He got an answer for that already in 2016, not to mention the fact that Trump has answered it time and time again throughout the first term of his presidency. But one thing that I was really annoyed with was that he said, will you condemn white supremacists and right-wing militias? And he lumped them in together as if they're one and the same. And when we're seeing that, as if you are a militia who is out trying to defend your businesses and defend your constitutional rights, that you're automatically a white supremacist. They're conflated. And one thing that really bothered me about Trump in that debate was that he did not stop and say, whoa, why are you putting those two in the same sentence? There's nothing white supremacist about a militia. You know, and in fact, one of them, the militias, those are actually guarded by the Constitution. You know, a well-regulated militia being necessary for a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It talks about the necessity of a militia. So don't lump in militias with white supremacists. And Trump should have done a good job of saying, sure, I condemn white supremacists, but don't ask me to condemn something that is constitutionally protected. You're asking me to condemn the Constitution right now, and I will not do that. That would have been such a better response from Donald Trump than just saying, sure, but of course, he said sure, and then immediately he was getting stepped on. So he couldn't even get a thought out edgewise because Chris Wallace and Joe Biden were both basically tag teaming him throughout the entire debate. But yeah, you're going to see more of these militias coming up. And they should be coming up because it is in times like this, times like these, when you have the left coming up and they're trying to supersede our free living Americans. They're trying to push this communist agenda, this Marxist agenda that we can see through BLM, through Antifa. They are Marxist agitators. So this is exactly why the founders said that a militia is necessary for a free society. We need to be able to stand up and protect our freedoms. And it is we, the people, that are able to do that. Hence Burden's We the People. So good job on Burden for catching that.
God is my witness if shit get real. I'll be right there in the field. Never fold in and never will. Yeah, everybody better chill. No, it won't be none of that in this little town. This ain't the place you wanna fuck around, cause shit.
There won't be that in this little town. This ain't the place you fuck around. No, that's awesome. And, you know, we've seen that they've gone out of the cities and they're starting to go into the suburbs. They're starting to go into the smaller towns. And there was a town I believe it was in Ohio, where, I think it was 50 Black Lives Matter people went into this small town, and you had 700 townspeople come out and say, hit the road, not here. You are not bringing that bullshit to this town. And they sent them packing. And there was another town in Colorado where they tried to come there, and the people in the town came out and just stomped the living shit out of them, which, they need to learn some lessons the hard way. It's so easy to sit here and say, oh, I never advocate violence or anything like that. And I never advocate starting the violence. I never advocate being the person who picks the fight. But if somebody picks a fight with you, I damn sure advocate you ending it. And that's what they did. And these people need to learn some lessons the hard way. Because that's one of the things. A lot of these people that are in these Antifa, Black Lives Matter movements that are out there rioting, so many of them are college graduates, come from good homes. They don't know what it is to actually have some sort of struggle. They are just bored, purposeless people going out there. They've never had to learn anything the hard way. And so it's good that they're getting taught some tough lessons by some people who likely have had to learn some tough lessons themselves. And most people who have had to learn some tough lessons end up understanding the ideas behind conservatism. So, very interesting.
Place you wanna fuck around, cause shit can happen in the midst of action. Just imagine that, people stand their ground. My neighborhood, the one that
Yeah, just admit people stand their ground. And that is one thing that is so important about Amy Coney Barrett and the Supreme Court nomination, is that for too long, we have had basically 4-4 with a swing vote, and we've never been able to reliably depend on that swing vote to actually vote for the people when it comes to issues of gun rights and standing your ground. And by having an unbalanced court by way of originalists, textualists, we can finally actually take the cases that the people on the right and the Supreme Court, or the contextualists and I keep going back to that because they're not really right. They're not really. I mean, I guess it is conservative to be a textualist, and I guess that is conservative. It's conservative because you're conserving the initial ideas of the Constitution. But they haven't taken these because they've never been able to reliably count on that swing vote, and they don't want that Supreme Court ruling to go the other direction. Well, if we have a majority, we can now go ahead and get those. I just think the first thing that they need to do once Amy Coney Barrett is nominated is just take all the gun cases and rule in favor of the Second Amendment. And that means universal stand your ground doctrine, universal castle doctrine, because no American should ever have to just tuck tail and run from somebody who is aggressing them. That is not in the spirit of America. That is not the ethos of America. If you come at me, we have every right to use whatever force necessary. America was founded in a you worry about yourself, I worry about mine, mind your own business type mentality. It's individualistic. So if somebody comes after you, that was their decision. And they always say that an armed society is a polite society, and there's so much truth to that. I'm from the northeast of Atlanta, Georgia, but there's a town in the northwest called Kennesaw where you are legally required to own a gun if you own a home in Kennesaw. Homeowners are legally required to own a gun. Of course, they don't enforce that because there's no way to, but it does inspire a gun culture. And they passed that law in 1983, and they went all the way until 2013 before they had their first gun murder. And this is a major suburb of Atlanta. There's a big college there. It's not some small little town where there's like 500 people that haven't had a gun, they haven't had a murder since the 1950s. No. This is a very populated area, but they didn't have a single gun murder for 30 years because they knew that you don't fuck around in this town. People know you go to Kennesaw, you don't fuck around. So an armed society is a polite society.
My neighborhood, the one that raised me and painted my character. Nothing was good and nothing was fair, but this is America. You can want.
That's great. Nothing is fair, but this is America. Again, we are an individualist society. You cannot, and sure, we don't want the whole deck to be stacked against the majority of people in the favor of a small handful, because then you start getting into oligarch territory, and that's not American either. But when you start getting into fairness, extreme fairness, that's when you start getting into these issues of equity. And equity essentially has to do with the redistribution of wealth and property. And it's being drawn under critical race theory along the lines of race. So it doesn't matter what your individual personal experiences are, what your individual cards that you were dealt were. I mean, you could be a poor person in Appalachia who's never had a penny to their name, and all of a sudden you're going to be forced to pay reparations to maybe some black person who is a multimillionaire. And so it doesn't work that way. In America, we don't want things to be completely unfair. Like I said, we can't have the deck stacked against the majority of the people. But everybody is given a certain hand that they're dealt when they're born. You know, America's a poker game. You're given your hand, and you got to play with it. Whether you can bluff 2-7 rags all the way to a big pot, that's your ability to do that. Or you could be somebody who's dealt pocket aces, and next thing you know, you're being busted out. It can happen. It's rare. You know, the odds are the odds. You know, the odds are in one person's favor, sure, but that doesn't guarantee anything. There are no guarantees in this life. So you can't have this universal application of fairness, because that's going to intentionally, or it's going to ultimately create what Thomas Sowell calls the quest for cosmic justice. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to supersede the laws of natural order, supersede the way things work cosmically. And in order to do that, you have to put so many measures of control in place that you're just, by definition, going to fall victim to the law of unintended consequences and bring the entire thing toppling down. In fact, the only way to do that, to give that kind of fairness that so many people, these Marxists on the left, want, it's by cutting down the tall trees. It's not allowing anybody to thrive. It's by putting, you want to talk about putting limiters on people, that's communism. You know, putting limiting principles on people's prosperity. That's communism. So the right are not the only ones who believe in some sort of limiting principles. For us, it's just, you know, they don't think that there should be limiting principles on culture. We think there should be. They think there should be limiting principles on your level of prosperity, and we don't believe in that. And so that's why I'm pretty concerned about whether we're ever actually going to be able to come to terms between the left and the right in this country, because we aren't even watching the same movie anymore. You know, it's one screen, two movies. We're not even watching the same storyline. We're not even operating from the same traditional values. So it's going to be tough. But at the end of the day, the people on the right, we just want to be left alone. It's the people on the left that are demanding of other people, that are demanding other people sacrifice and give up in their namesake or for their interests. You know, the right isn't really requiring anything from anybody, except just leave me alone, don't take all my money, make it easy for me to run my own life and do all that. It's kind of hard to argue in favor of the left when one is imposing on the other and the other just wants to be left alone.
America, you get one shot, it's like pretend like you're shooting a Derrick. Ain't no fucking with me, you come fucking with me, and I might embarrass you. They want me under the dirt, don't wanna let me breathe. They want my mama to hurt. They might know my face, they might know my name, but they don't know my past. They never felt my pain. I don't wanna die.
And that is interesting. You know, it's like they might know your face, and of course, like with the left, your face is just your skin color. But they don't know what you've been through, and nor do they care. You know, if they go around burning a business down, they don't care what it took to build that business. They don't care the blood, sweat, and tears that went into that. The sacrifice. You know, all the times where you maybe weren't able to do things with your family because you had to work 14 hours a day building a business. And they'll just throw a Molotov cocktail in that and torch that down in 30 minutes. You know, decades of work. They'll just burn it to the ground, and they don't care.
Somebody pray for me. The homies in the sky gon' have to wait for me. I can smell your lies. Watch what you say to me.
Oh yeah, I can smell your lies. That's true, because I mean the left is so predicated on lies and just the absolute sequestering of truth. And we can see that through our media these days. We can see that through Hollywood. We can see that just the lies are nonstop. It's more about the narrative, and that's when you start getting into propaganda territory, when you're no longer concerned with the facts of anything that's happened, and you are just worried about pushing a narrative that propels an agenda. And that is what we're seeing from our media today. They don't care. They don't care what's true. I mean, we have... Just look at the reliance on unnamed sources or anonymous sources or somebody said. You know, sources close to somebody said, but they never actually say who it was. They never actually back any of it up because they don't actually care to look into whether anything is true. Just look at Chris Wallace during the debates again, going back to the debates. He ran Trump with that $750 tax line from the New York Times, but Trump didn't pay $750 in taxes. That was his tax liability. He ended up paying like $5 million and saying, "Here, I'm overpaying, but you know, if I owe any more elsewhere, just take it out of this." But the article from the New York Times actually says that. The headline says he only paid $750, but then if you read the body of the article, it says, oh, no, that's not true. But Chris Wallace, he didn't care about that. He didn't care about the truth. He wanted in front, while everybody was watching during debates, for that $750 tax lie to be pushed out again. Despicable. And yeah, America, that's why so few people actually rely on the mainstream media anymore. They're coming to people like me. They're coming to people like Styx Hexenhammer. They're coming to people like Tim Pool, Razorfist, Steven Crowder, all these different people that are on YouTube, independent, doing our research. Because we don't have an agenda outside of we just want to live free. We just want a free society. We want America to be what America was supposed to be. There's no grand scheme behind it.
Watch what you say, cause I done seen a lot of shit that I can never talk about. I'm speaking the truth and you disagree, but what can you do? Here's a message to you little ass little broke bitches that I see on the news. Whatever got you thinking you can come and do what you want, well that ain't the move.
No, whatever got you thinking that, no, it's not the move. Again, they don't care. They don't care that it's somebody else's property. And just because you're feeling a certain way, just because you have a certain worldview that likely is not built upon any sort of factual basis, does not give you the right to go out and start destroying other people's property. You know, your worldview is your worldview. Fight for it, sure. But fight for it in a way that isn't damaging other people. And if the American people reject your worldview, like we do with Marxism, then you need to take that loss with some dignity. Not go out and start raising hell over it. Wreaking havoc. That's not what you do. And it flabbergasts me why so many people, they just turn a blind eye to Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Again, at the debates, why are white supremacists even being brought up? We've got Antifa out there burning everything down. And they want to make it about the Proud Boys. What do the Proud Boys do? They go and they wave flags and they drink beer and they have conversations with other people. And they call them a white supremacist despite the fact that they're led by an Afro-Cuban named Enrique Tarrio. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The facts do not purport the narrative. And so they just wipe the facts away and just browbeat you with the bullshit narrative. Fucking tired of it.
Well, that ain't the move. Gotta protect what I built on my back. If I'm back in the corner, it's legal to shoot.
Yep, gotta protect what I built. And if you're backed into a corner, then yeah, it's legal to shoot. Like I said, we need to have universal castle doctrine, universal stand your ground, and it really should just be. If it doesn't matter whether you're in your home, outside. We also need universal concealed carry with no permits, universal open carry. Guns should just be something that we all have, and if you attack somebody, well, you're likely going to find yourself on the wrong end of a gun. We need that threat. We need, and it's not an ominous threat. It's more so a warning that if you are a threat, you're not going to get over on other people. But we see so much sympathy for the ones trying to get over on other people and so little sympathy for those that are being gotten over on. It's disgusting. It's the absolute backwards nature of leftist ideology. They get everything backwards.
Corner is legal to shoot. Hard for you to see the other side. You ain't been a victim. All I want is rights. That ain't protest. That's a mob riot. You were shot dead just the other night. Might be misled, but let it be said. You only voting left because they voting right.
Oh, you might be that was awesome. You might be misled, but you're only voting left because they're voting right. And that's a great that's a great calling out of low information voters or low information activists. You know, our culture has so long denigrated anybody on the right as evil, as hateful, as bigoted, as this and that all people have to do is have that emotional, visceral reaction to the charges against the right without ever actually knowing what the right really stands for. We've seen that in Jonathan Haidt, the famous social scientist. He talks about how the right typically understands the left and thinks they're wrong, and the left doesn't understand the right at all and just thinks they're evil. But if you don't understand something, how can you think it's evil? They don't even try. They don't even want to have the conversation. We hear that time and time again, that they don't even want to know. They are willfully low information because they have a worldview, and the most important thing is protecting that worldview and protecting the narrative that works as a glass bubble around that worldview. And so long as they are insulated within that, they feel safe. And that's why they vote left, because we vote right. They don't need to actually know what the left stands for. Because if they did, they probably wouldn't be on the left. They just get a false representation of what the right is, and they say, I don't want to be that. Just low information. Default Democrats, so to say.
They voting left because they voting right. If we all people, then we all equal. Gotta come together, ain't no better time. United we stand, united we fall. What have we done? We are the puppets.
United we stand, divided we fall. We are the puppets. Yeah, and that's true. That's true. And you can't say that with all of the lies coming from the mainstream media, coming from the establishment, coming from the establishment Democrats, even the establishment Republicans, the rhinos, all of it is built to divide us. Because the true goal is to get rid of a free America. And you can't do that if we're all standing together in unison purporting a free America, when we all have that social fabric that ties us together. Whether we disagree on this idea or that idea, this person is pro-choice, this person is pro-life, whatever. As long as people still believe in the Constitution, believe in a nation that is able to self-govern and doesn't need totalitarian autocratic rule enforced over them, then we can survive. But we have now, and I've said it before, China's the model. We have these globalists. America stands in the way of that Chinese model, global scale, autocratic world government. And so we have people in America that will benefit from being leaders of that world government that resent America for it having a limitation to the power that they've achieved in just American politics. And so they seek to divide us. They seek to keep, because if we are divided and if we're fighting each other, we're not fighting them. And so the left, we often call them useful idiots, but you could almost say that us on the right sometimes are useful idiots too. But at the same time, if we just stand down, that leftism takes over, because they are still fighting in the name of what that globalist agenda is really pushing for. They just don't understand the big picture of it.
Oh, what have we done? We are the puppets. Who in the hands? What are the plans? Who would have thought? Who's seen it coming? Why? Every time I see the police around me, I get hella nervous, like I'm doing bad. If I get profiled, I get pulled over, maybe handcuffed and put up in the bag, but I won't resist. You can search me, I insist. Yeah, you know that's confidence. Play cool, 'cause I ain't got no time for this. Yeah, then I say bye and wave, and I just drive away, and that's just it. But it wasn't so privileged that I ain't died today.
Well, that's a great part. He talks about how, we all get nervous when we encounter police. Even people on the right who support the police. Because we do know that there are bad police. We do know that people get busted, either get drugs planted on them, get tickets they don't deserve, things like that. We all have a fear, as free-loving Americans, when somebody with authority and with the power to punish us is approaching us. That's a very natural reaction. But that doesn't mean that we don't support the police and what they do. We just worry that maybe we're catching one of the bad ones. And so he talks about how he doesn't resist and how he ends up getting let free and gets to go. And they say that, that it's because of his white privilege that he got let go. No, it's because he knows how to deal with the police. And we see that so often, especially with a lot of the black community, when we see a lot of these interactions with police, they're told, I'll get to that in a second, but we see that they just react by basically saying, fuck the police, don't, leave me alone. They're combative right off the jump, which is going to put the police who are in that position of power on their toes a little bit. It's going to put them on their toes. It's going to make them a little jumpy. And then you wonder why somebody gets killed. And, there's this thing called the talk, which I talked about in one of my Revved Up videos, where my initial Revved Up videos, back when I did those 10 episodes where it was, I was on the couch talking and that kind of thing. They do this thing called the talk, where black parents sit their kids down. I mean, we're talking about kids that are like, 10, 9, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, whatever, and they basically tell them that the police are likely going to try to kill them one day. That's one of the worst things you could possibly do. That's one of the worst things you could possibly do, and is make them feel like they're going to be hunted down their entire life. What does that do to somebody's psyche? It's incredibly damaging. And it also means that they're going to be fully resentful whenever they meet a police officer who may be perfectly well-intentioned. They're putting their children at risk by doing this. And they're also giving them that victim mentality. Nobody succeeds with a victim mentality. Nobody succeeds when they think the entire world is out to get them. It's child abuse to do that. But yeah, so it's not privilege. It has nothing to do with privilege. It has everything to do with how you interact with the police. Whether you threaten the police or make them feel like you're threatening them, like, be cool with the police. Just be cool with them. And things will typically be fine.
Privilege that I ain't died today. My neighborhood, the one that erased me and painted my character. Nothing was good and nothing was fair, but this is America. You get one shot and it's like, pretend like you're shooting a derrick. Ain't no fucking with me, you can fucking with me, and I ain't going down. Somebody pray for me. The homies in the sky gon' have to wait for me. I can smell your lies. Watch what you say to me. I wanna say a lot of shit that I can never talk about.
Wow, alright, so that... Man, I really like this song. First of all, the instrumental was great with this. I like that kind of lonely guitar with the beat was great. Burden, good lyricist. And he's good delivery, too. Snaps on it. So, no, that was awesome. So, Burden, if you see this video, 2 thumbs up. Great job. Let me know when you got another video out. It's hard for me to keep up with music because I work a full-time job, and then basically this channel is a second full-time job. So it's hard for me to keep up with music like I would like to. And I mostly only respond to music that is political, because this is a political channel. But if you see something that you want me to respond to, hopefully something new, it's not very beneficial for me to respond to a song that's like 3 years old or something like that. But if you see a new release that you think would be in my wheelhouse, send it on over to me, because I have a lot of fun doing these music video reactions. And I think it's really cool that we're seeing this kind of rise of conservatism in hip-hop. We've seen a number of artists come out. I mean, not necessarily conservatism, but they're pushing back against the left-wing culture. They're pushing back against left-wing culture. We have people like Tom McDonald. We have people like Struggle Jennings. Upchurch. Love Upchurch. He doesn't really make much political music, but he has... I'd love to be able to react to an Upchurch song at some point on this. We've seen, what's his name, Tyson James and Bryson Gray, and there's been a number of them coming out now, and that's pretty awesome. So, anyways, guys, that's the video. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. Otherwise, you probably won't know when I put any videos out, because we all know it's voices like mine that are first to be taken out back in old Yellered by the folks at Big Tech. Speaking of Big Tech, if you want to follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Parler, and Twitter at Ram Thorburn. Also, Minds and Pilled.net. I'm also on there at Ram Thorburn. And if you're interested in contributing to the channel, like I said, I had a couple contributions lately that I've now got a new webcam on the way, so hopefully it'll be looking better soon. There are links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.